It gets to a point, though, doesn't it, Josh, where you look at the games like Chelsea, that's obviously a big game, and it does not take getting up for. Do you know what I mean? It's Chelsea. You don't need to get yourself up for that. But then against these teams like Bournemouth, and even the lower fodder teams, and you look at your players and how they're playing, it's just not the same. So where do you put your foot in and say you've got to get yourself up for every game when you're wearing that shirt, instead of just selecting games like the big games to try and put performance in?
This is literally exactly what I said last week, though. I'm not just trying to be a dick because it's Man United. Genuinely, whenever I watch it, the players don't seem up for it unless it's a game that everyone would be up for.
Like a big game, everybody be up for that, yeah.
But who do you pin that on?
How do you coach that out of players?
I was saying to Ethan today that we just need a massive clear out. There's just so much shite at Manchester United that we just can't seem to get rid of. You know, Martial's been there for far too long.
Well too long.
Far too long. And then you look at, like, Amrabat, I was happy with the signing of him at the start of the season. He just doesn't look good enough. I'm glad we've got him on loan. I won't keep him. Reguilon, again, I understand why we signed him because Malacia and Shaw were out. But he looks awful as well. You know, Evans, again, we signed him for squad depth. I don't think he expected to get the minutes that he's been getting, but he's been playing far too much for me.
Needs must, innit? Needs must.
But we've been saying this about Manchester United now, season after season, that there needs to be a clear out in players. Like, I remember after Jose Mourinho, when you had like Matic and Fred, and Pogba was playing really poorly and his attitude was poor and stuff like that. It was the same issue then. So I know that it's an issue from the top down, but is there still not even someone that's in charge of transfers at the club?
There's a CEO and there's a director of sport, but the problem is because we're kind of in this weird grey area at the moment with ownership in terms of like Sir Jim taking over and this, that and the other. So I think the whole thing with Sir Jim taking over is when he comes in, he wants to take over the footballing stuff, so he wants to hire his people. So we're linked to, what's his name, Jean-Claude Blanc, the French guy, to become our next director of football, which I think would be a massive move because he's done great stuff for like PSG and other big clubs, Juventus as well. He went into Juventus when they had their big meltdown and he turned them around. Right. So he's got a proven track record of being good with what he did. But I think we just need to be ruthless. And I think one of the problems is that the owners don't want to sell these players because they know, first of all, they're going to take a big financial loss. So you look at like the summer, you know, we were looking at maybe selling Maguire for 30 million. That's a £50 million hit that we'd have taken. And the problem is even though that
he's
was
just got fucking player of the month as well.
So even though that would have been a few years difference and they probably wouldn't have felt it in their pockets, the club would have felt it on their books.
Yeah.
So at the moment, Maguire's in the team as an £80 million asset.
Is it also like homegrown English?
I don't think it's that because there's a
Not
lot of
homegrown,
there's a lot of
English.
Does he not count as homegrown though?
No.
Homegrown's through the academy, man.
Yeah.
Oh, I thought it meant they just had to be going through English
it's
academies.
just
No,
academy.
you do have to have some English players in your squad, but homegrown means like
to come through your own academy.
so like Rashford or
Archie Gray.
So, but yeah, I think that's one of the issues. I don't know. We just got too much shite in the team, and they seem to play too often. That's the problem. It's like Kobe Mainoo came in against Everton, and yes, Everton, they've had a decent season performance-wise.
Well, they smashed fucking Newcastle, didn't they? So.
But he comes in to get in that game after the international break, after they've had their deduction, a very hostile, and he was the best player on the pitch for us. He was our best midfielder. And then he didn't start against Galatasaray, came on and looked quality against them as well.
So then you got to put that down to the manager, though, realistically, aren't you? And then you can make them kind of deductions yourself as a fucking all on Arsenal.
Oh.
And then he didn't play against Chelsea, and I thought, do you know what? Fair enough. Chelsea, big game. He's a young kid. Play the more experienced player in Amrabat. I got that one, and I thought, well, yeah, rest him for the weekend.
No, but fuck form and fuck that, bro. At the end of the day, he comes on and has an absolute... I know it's Everton, bro, but at the end of the day, they had that 10-point deduction. They were playing like the lives.
That's what I mean is that...
And what is it, Mainoo? He had a fucking blinder, bro.
He had two good games. He played really well against
Everton. He got dropped
Everton.
the next game, so... Explain to me the thought process behind that. When does it come to the fact that it's just players having good spells, this, that and the other? When does it come down to the manager? He had a blinder against Everton. Put him on.
I agree.
Football's a confidence-based game. If you play well the game before, you're probably going to play well the next game. Not always, don't get me wrong. That's a little bit of a weird thing to say, but it is a confidence-based game, especially defensively in that aspect. Yeah, you're going to put yourself about more.
And I don't think Amrabat's good enough, and I think...
He's far from good enough to be in your team.
I think the problem as well is that... So this is going to be a weird one, but I don't know if Scott McTominay is good enough. And it's weird to say because but his job in that team is not to score goals.
Yeah,
it's a
obviously.
massive bonus, and he's been doing great, and he's won us some games with the goals that he scored, and I can't dispute that. But he's not in the team to do that. He's in that team to be kind of a double pivot with somebody. And it's like today, he was poor today. And it's kind of like...
That's what I mean, like his goals in them games can kind of cloud people's judgments of his overall performance, because at the end of the day, he's in there to do a set job, which isn't actually striking.
But then when he was against Everton and he had Mainu next to him, he had a license to go forward because Mainu was happy to sit.
He used to be a striker as well, didn't he? He was in the youth setup, wasn't he? He was. That's why he's got a goal in him.
But can I ask you a question? Because in the last show, I said to you, next season, which player would you rather have in the squad, McTominay or Casemiro?
Odegaard.
And you said you'd rather have McTominay in the squad.
Then who? Then
Than Casemiro next season.
Yeah, that's more based on age and availability. Like Casemiro's had a big injury this season. He's been a big miss since he's been out.
Yeah, but my point is like if you think McTominay is on a similar level, or at least has been this season, than Casemiro, who's on a massive contract. And you're saying about Martial, and you're saying about like, obviously Maguire and Evans and stuff, like what players are good enough? And at this point, is it maybe not just an issue with the players? Is the manager not getting the best out of these players? Because some of them aren't bad. Like McTominay, if you look at him, you would expect him to play for most, like obviously not top 6, but most Premier League teams. So a fantastic manager should be able to draw more out of him.
I get what you're saying, but then he was there when Van Gaal was there. Probably didn't play because he wasn't old enough. He was there with Mourinho. He was there with Solskjaer, and he's now there with Ten Hag.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, if we'd have had the same manager for the last 5 years, and I'm saying this about him, I get your argument, but he's had 3 managers, one of which is considered one of, people make the argument that Jose Mourinho is a better manager than Pep Guardiola.
You make the argument.
But a lot of people, a lot of people say the same thing as well. I've heard it from a lot of other people, but if these guys can't get it out of him, like he's had 3 managers now, he's obviously just not a good enough player to be at Man United to push us to that next level. He's a good enough player to be at a West Ham or somewhere like that where they're a mid-table side, they're going to fight for the odd cup, this, that and the other. Excuse me. But you wouldn't expect West Ham to push for the title.
Yeah.
He'd be a great player for them.